Recording has started, Chair.
Hello and welcome to the Homes and Safe Communities. May I remind everyone present that this meeting is being live streamed today, the 12th of May, as well as being recorded via the internet and this recording archived for future viewing. Could all participants please mute themselves when not speaking in order to avoid any background noise or feedback when other participants are speaking. If a participant wishes to speak, can they please put their hand up if they can be seen on screen, or use the raise hand function. Please ensure that all debate is raised verbally and not via the chat function for the sake of the recording. The chat function may be used to highlight any technical issues and or to grab the attention of the chairman or Democratic Services Officer. If any participant has difficulty hearing or being heard when they are addressing the committee, then they should let the chairman or Democratic Officer know. If they have a webcam, they should try turning this off, as this will help with broadband or Wi-Fi bandwidth, so they at least can hear and be heard. Thank you. So I will go on to agenda item 1, appointment of the Vice Chairman. Can I take nominations, please? Councillor Brooks, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to nominate Councillor Julie Aviat, please, for Vice Chair.
Okay, will anyone second that?
Yes, I'd like to second that. Councillor Perks.
Thank you. Any other nominations? I don't see any other hands up. So I am going to go ahead and say, well done, Julie, you're Vice Chair for another year. Thank you. Okay, second item is apologies for absence. Do we have any?
Yes, we do, Chair. We have apologies from Mr. Anthony Raybould and Mrs. Gina Doyle from the tenant representatives.
Thank you. Agenda item number 3, minutes of the meeting held on the 14th of April 2021. Are we all happy to accept, or has anyone got any amendments they'd like to make? Anything they need to point out?
Move the minutes, Chair.
Okay, we'll move. Thank you.
I'll second those.
Yeah. Minutes moved. Thank you. Item number 4, to declare declarations of interest. Any received? Okay, so I think we're going straight to agenda item 5 then, the presentation on the Vale of Glamorgan's Housing Advice Hub or One-Stop Shop. I believe Kate is leading on this, is that correct?
Hi, yes, Chair, I'm leading on this.
Okay, if you'd like to go ahead then, thank you.
Thank you. Just to let everybody know, first of all, thank you for allowing us to come and talk about what we think is a really exciting project today. There's going to be 2 parts to the presentation. I'll start with it and give you a bit of background and explain why we actually commissioned it. I'll put the PowerPoint up now, and then Pobble colleagues Nathan and Lorraine, who are here, will take over and do the second part of the presentation. Okay, so I'm just going to try and share my screen. Sorry, bear with me, they've just changed the way we share.
Sorry, or just while Kate's doing that, can I just double check that nobody who's participating in the meeting tonight is trying to live stream? We are getting feedback on our live stream at the moment. No? Okay, thank you very much. Just needed to double check that it wasn't because there was somebody within the meeting that's also live streaming. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, so like I said, thank you for allowing us to come to the committee today to talk about this project. We're all very excited about it, so hopefully you will be too. So the idea for the one-stop shop came about, well, many years ago. It's been in action in the local housing strategy for several years. And then there's been additional pressure put on us going back now to about 2015, 2016. So I've taken a quote directly from the guidance here, which explains that Welsh Government were looking for basically people to be able to deliver more for less, and locality-based support, which is what the one-stop shop would be, was classed as a good model of support to be able to do that. Obviously, you can see the quote on screen, but it basically explains that if people are going to be effectively supported, but with fewer resources, the developments offer the opportunity to support people in a new and innovative way. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the history of the housing support grant. I apologise to people who already may know this, but there will be people in the room who won't necessarily know the history. So the housing support grant came into being back in 2019. There was a pilot project that Welsh Government carried out across Wales looking at whether or not to merge 10 existing grants. In the long run, they decided to create 2 grants from that. One is the Children's and Communities Grant, and one is the Housing Support Grant. So the Housing Support Grant is the grant we're talking about today. It's an amalgamation of, lots of people have heard of the Supporting People Programme Grant and the Homelessness Prevention Grant, as well as the Rent Smart Wales Enforcement Grant. So it's an amalgamation of the 3, with significantly, the Supporting People side of it is significantly higher than the rest of it in terms of the funding stream. It's an early intervention programme. It doesn't cover the statutory duties. We're not able to fund statutory services from the Housing Support Grant, but it is there to augment and complement those services. It also helps people to avoid going into more costly settings, such as some care settings, and also into potentially health settings. Also, good news this year, we've actually had an additional £1.2 million through the Housing Support Grant this year, giving us a total budget of £4.7 million for the Vale and Morgan. So we had to look at I wanted to look at why we actually brought the project into being. So in order to explain that, I wanted to explain a little bit about the traditional models of support that we've used in the past. So the Housing Support Grant, whilst it was still a Supporting People grant in the main, mainly supported things such as supported housing for people that were, which is like temporary accommodation, but with support for people who are a bit too vulnerable to go into general needs temporary accommodation. And it also funded floating support workers. So floating support workers would work with people in any kind of tenure that support within their own home or whilst they were homeless, to try and help them to get over their housing issues and also look for alternative accommodation if needed. However, we did find that we were getting very, very long lists for traditional floating support. Floating supports tends to be a support worker will hold a caseload, so they'll be supporting perhaps 10, 12 people at a time. This created massive long waiting lists for us, which obviously isn't ideal because people do need support at the time of crisis, which is one of the reasons we started looking at alternative models. We also had static budgets for several years, and there's been a threat for many, many years that there's going to be a reduction in the funding. Obviously, that hasn't come to be in, and I think the pandemic has obviously changed a lot of the thinking around homelessness. So we've actually had the additional £1.2 million this year. But there's also the floating support does not suit everybody. There's some people that simply don't want people supporting them on that sort of regular basis. They want just to be able to dip in and have support as and when they need it, so at times of crisis. So that was another huge consideration. Like I said, it also provides support on the spot. So, you're not waiting perhaps up to 6 months at times. We were with the floating support. People go in and get the support on the day that they need it. We also piloted similar sorts of schemes across the Vale. We piloted with various providers. Pobble, who are here today, one of the main providers who trialled this model with us across the Vale. And I'll talk a little bit more about their successful bids in a minute. So what is a one-stop shop? It's basically, we're getting as many, Pobble are the commission provider to actually run the service, and they look at any kind of support that person's going to need in order to be able to, whether they need to find a new home, whether they need support to stay in their home, whether they need support to help themselves get into work or training. They can look at everything in that one building. It's accessible to people, anybody across the Vale of Glamorgan, absolutely anybody can access the project. So there's no barriers to that. There's also potential to expand the service, and I know Pobble have also been really proactive with this already, where they've had conversations with various statutory and non-statutory organisations about getting their services into the shop, so that they'll be able to do a little bit more joined up work and provide a much more holistic service over time. And obviously, we've still got our traditional floating support. We haven't cut that in any way, shape or form, and we haven't cut our range of supported housing either. In fact, we're constantly expanding that. I put the service objectives down. There are a lot of them. I will quickly whiz through them. I won't read them in full. But basically, the objectives of the service are to reduce the risk of people becoming homeless or moving into institutional settings, assisting people feeling safe, minimising social isolation and creating opportunities to enhance skills for employment, etc. Obviously, they also develop skills for independent living. They facilitate access to appropriate, other support such as healthcare, etc. They work with people to help them reduce substance misuse and lessen the need for statutory and long-term care interventions, etc. And one of the lovely things about the one-stop shop, it's also a place of inspiration. So they're also looking at lots of different ways to help people, really engage with the community and able to get back into, being active members of the community in terms of work, employment, and those sorts of things. So we looked at these for quite some time, and we looked at how we could actually get the one-stop shop. And one of the things I wanted to talk about was some of the barriers that we had to it, that we were able to overcome partly with our support from Pobble. So one of the big barriers to having this kind of service in the past has been that it's very difficult to get capital funding for this kind of service. And we have really struggled with that in the past. However, Pobble have actually got a very similar service running in Bridgend, and I've had that for a few years now, and that's done entirely on a revenue budget. So we looked at that model closely with Pobble and also with Bridgend housing support grants, which was back then the Supporting People Grant team. And we looked at the different ways we could do it and how we could fund it from revenue funding based on that model. And so the Pobble have been, close partners with us throughout this. However, because of the way the housing support grant works, we still had to go out to an open tender, which we did. And we had a few different providers bid for this, but Pobble's presentation and their submission was far and above everybody else's. Obviously, they have had some experience, like I said, with Bridgend, and you could really see it wasn't just their skills and experience they were bringing to the table, it's also the passion from the project and from the people running that project that really make it work. So I'm going to hand over to my Pobble colleagues, if that's okay, who are going to give you the far more interesting part of the presentation, where they'll actually talk about how the scheme is running. Just one last thing, the scheme actually went live on the 6th of April 2020, so not ideal timing in terms of the pandemic, obviously in terms of being able to open the shop. However, they have been running the service virtually since then, and they'll be able to tell you some of the success they've had with the way they've been running it. So I'm going to take my presentation down now, and I think Pobble colleagues going to try and share their own, but if there's any issues, I've also got their presentation. Yeah.
Thank you, Kate. Yeah, let's give it a go.
There we go.
It's worked.
This is a new way of looking at it for me. I haven't seen, because obviously Teams has updated since I'd asked it a presentation. So apologies for the size. Okay. Welcome everyone. Good evening. I'm Lorraine Griffiths, and I'm the area manager for Pobble in Vale. And my colleague with me today is Nathan, and he manages the service that we're going to look at. So obviously it's the Vale one-stop shop. And as Kate has said, we do deliver a drop-in one-stop shop in Bridgend, and although that service was the foundation for us for our journey with the Housing Support Grant team, it has turned out different, because we recognise in Pobble that services need to meet the needs of where they need to be. So one what works in one area does not necessarily work in another area. So there are similarities, but also differences in how we sort of like deliver this service. And because we learn all the time. We've learned a huge amount from delivering the service in Bridgend for the last 5 years. So and sort of all the learning we took from there, we've sort of made changes for how we deliver in the Vale. So what is the Vale one-stop shop? I don't know how. Does anyone know how we can make the slides bigger?
Lorraine, are they like full size on your screen?
No.
No, okay. Bear with me a second.
Just to say, I can read on my tablet, no problem.
All right. So
Yeah.
if everyone else can see it, that's fine. Because it's quite small on my screen, I was concerned that you couldn't see it.
Yeah, it's perfectly readable.
I can see it perfectly fine, thank you.
Wonderful, that's
Okay.
great.
It's fine on mine as well, Lorraine, thank you.
Okay, well, what is the Vale one-stop shop? What is it to Pobl and to the Housing Support Grant team? Well, as Kate has said, we were commissioned to set up a service that could respond immediately to those who needed support to prevent, at the time, mainly preventing homelessness, but of course it's wider than that. And we had planned to start the service in the building back last April. But obviously everything changed and we had to change very quickly because we still wanted to deliver the service. It didn't matter to us that we entered a pandemic. The need is still there and we still wanted to meet that need. So the purpose of the service is to be responsive. It responds to those who actually walk in and need that service. So there's no waiting list, there's no timing, there's somebody there ready to help as soon as you walk in, whatever your needs are. And then it's about delivering that service to that individual immediately. Now, some individuals will come into the service and that's all they'll need. They can come back as many times as they want. Others will need a bit longer and we respond to that short-term need. But then if they need longer than that, I think for us, it's important that we refer on to other services. That could be other housing support grant services, floating support, supported housing, or it could be other services like Tithe, Atlas Row. It could be any other service. It isn't about, we don't deliver to meet everyone's needs. We're the starting point for everyone's needs, and we look at how we can meet those needs with all the services that surround us. So we do help with immediate needs around benefits, but we wouldn't necessarily take the longer term view. We have services that will work within the drop-in when we open it. We started building links with many other agencies so that they could deliver surgeries within the building with us, so that people could come in and get their needs met immediately. And of course that meant there's no waiting list. We provide advice and assistance. As I've said, we make referrals, and one of the things we learned when we were piloting is that it isn't just about the service being in Barry and in one place. That will be our main hub, but it'll also be we'll also be looking to do outreach services throughout the Vale, you know, pandemic allowing. So that, I mean, that'll be the next steps of where we go. We're also opening early into the evenings and on Saturday mornings, because we recognise people's needs aren't just 9 to 5. So we try to be flexible. And the stuff we've learnt over the last 12 months about being digital is that actually we can deliver services whenever people need them. If they ring, you know, if we need to contact someone in the evenings because they were at work all day, then we're able to do that. It's not restricted in any way. What I'll do now is hand over to my colleague, who will give, obviously he's living and breathing the service, because you know he's there, he's set it up, he's delivering on a day-by-day basis for the last 12 months.
Thanks, Lorraine. So a lot of this Kate and Lorraine would have already gone through. I'll just elaborate a bit more. So what makes the service different is, as they rightly say, we're a reactive service. So in the past, if you someone put you forward for support, they'd have to do a referral, and that goes to the old supporting people team, or now the housing support grant team, and they would allocate that out, and then obviously they'd be allocated a support worker. Well, that can take a number of weeks. And you imagine being someone who's at risk of losing your house, your benefits are being stopped. Your utilities and your gas and electric is going to be cut off, and how that affects your mental health as well. Sometimes the situation can get a lot worse by the time you get that support in, and you're really struggling to engage with that person, because their life's gone from, I'm going to get a support worker, I'm going to get the help I need, but they've had to wait a good couple of weeks before that's happened. With us, we're there to deliver on the day. So people come in. A live example would be from someone got released from prison. They didn't have anywhere to stay. They went out, and obviously they didn't know what to do when they got released. They were released onto the streets. They got into a bit of trouble. The police actually really, good support from the police, and really, really inspiring, really, from the police. They didn't lock him up. They brought him down to us, and we ran the housing team, and we started sorting that out, and he thankfully was placed in a hotel. But then we also ran his GP and got that in motion for his medication for his mental health. And then we, Lloyd's pharmacies across the road, so that the individual was on a methadone program. So we started speaking to him about, if we can start that as soon as possible, as soon as the GP puts his medication through, and they said they're happy for him to go back there. So all that stuff happened in a really short space of time, and potentially stopped that person, ended up back in jail because he was on a license and he had to have somewhere to stay. He did have an accommodation when he left, but he argued with that person, and that was only one night, and then he was out on the street. So that's just one example of how it can work. We worked in multiple agencies that day, just organically, just because that's what that person needed. And from there, he's in the hotel, and we're supporting him to get him on his benefits, because we've got a welfare benefits worker, and he's fantastic with that. And the staff are great as well. They know how to do the benefits, but if they're unsure, he's there to offer reassurance and guidance. And he's gone on from strength to strength, and we're looking now at how to rehouse and what areas, and we're liaising with his probation worker, and he probably will need longer term support. We can support up to 12 weeks, but we've got him in the place where he's ready to work with us. He hasn't gone back onto substances. His mental health hasn't declined to a point where he's chaotic, and we can't get hold of him. He's got a phone, thankfully, which we can contact him on, and we also run drop-ins in the 2 hotels where a lot of the homelessness people are placed at the moment, in the Celtic and Holiday Inn. So he knows he can come down on a Tuesday and Thursday and speak to us there as well. Self-referral, that's a massive, you can self-refer to the supporting people team and get an assessment and a referral. But again, that can take time, but people can just ring us up. They're engaged in that process. They want that change, and they want something different for their life, or they might just realise they're in trouble and not know how to get out of that. So they can ring us, email us, and we support them immediately there and then. So that's a massive advantage of this service, and it's been paramount during the pandemic. It's actually probably been very you know, it's been, like Lorraine said, a massive learning experience for us, you know, in the pandemic, but also for service users coming forward, ringing us, using WhatsApp and being involved in like the digital side of things, and more of an emphasis on themselves rather than the support worker. So yeah, that's basically in a nutshell what makes us different, and that's what makes us more accessible, and you know, that's what I think fundamentally makes us work as a service. So what do? We address you know, debts and bills, and we help with correspondence, and you know, preventing homeless, general housing advice. And during the pandemic, the array of service users is dramatically changed. We were birthed in the pandemic, so we've known, you know, my staff team, we've known no different. We've had people who have just lost their jobs, people who you know, can't feed their families and don't know where to turn, and they've never been in this situation before, to people who have been in and out of homelessness for, you know, most of their adult lives. But that's, you know, that's what we do you know, essentially is we help support people around their housing, but we also look at, like Kate said earlier, we look at the aspirations of that individual. We've got a training centre downstairs, which you'll see later. We do like accredited training, and we work with loads of different services. We look at their strengths and focus on what they can do. And if they can do something themselves, like, you know, if they need a bit of, sometimes people just need reassurance over correspondence, and it can be a quick fix where someone might be worrying about that letter for weeks on end, but they can just ring up or, you know, make an appointment to drop down, and that can be sorted within an hour, and that's massively beneficial to that person. They can go home and hopefully have a, you know, a sound night's sleep and get on with you know, their life in a, you know, in a more peaceful way. So yeah, that's this shop. If any of you'd like to come down and have a visit, you'd be more than welcome. You know, if anyone can, you know, circulate my email after, and I can book you in. But yeah, we've opened the physical environment now, so we are there for emergencies. People can drop in, knock the door, and as long as we haven't got someone booked in, because obviously we can only have so many people in the building with COVID restrictions, but as long we can say come back later. So again, that's added another dimension to our support. We have in more people who haven't got phones for various different reasons. Some people who are forgetful, some people who have got anxiety over the phone and like to speak face to face. So we've been able to open the shop, and we get a lot of people who are just knocking past, you know, from very chaotic people to people who are just, I'm getting very old and I can't walk the stairs, and can you help me with like Homes For You and setting that up, the digital side of it, and, you know, talk me through the process and how to bid. So, you know, it is a service, you know, for all ages and all people in different circumstances.
And we particularly looked for a location that was very central to Barry, so that people do walk past us, that they do, so that we are visible. And that was important to us, is the visibility, so people can see us. And also what was important to us is how it felt when you walked in. We wanted somewhere that felt friendly, that, you know, that people felt when they come in, they feel like it's somewhere that they want to be, and they know they're going to be helped, that there's no barriers to people. It is worth coming to see, because we've looked at it, and we looked at it from making it the most friendly, welcoming environment that we could possibly do. And like it's we can't wait for as many people to come in and as possible. It's, you know, because it's such a friendly environment, and that was important to us, because it takes a lot for people to actually come and ask for help, and if so the less barriers there are, the more likely they're going to come in. So that we wanted something that they felt that they could easily walk in to see someone with a smiling face and a nice environment. So we think we've achieved it.
Yeah, certainly. And yeah, like Kate alluded to earlier, we wanted, we didn't want to shortchange people. We wanted it to be an open environment, and we wanted it to be aspirational. We're running courses out of there and working with other providers. So when people come in, they might come in a crisis initially, but as we deal with those crisis points and those start going away and they start to feel like they're under control or they're being dealt with, they can start looking at other areas, education, employment, training, volunteering, mental health, or other substance misuse. So yeah, during when the pandemic eases and we're allowed more people, we've already linked in with a lot of agencies within the areas, a lot of different organisations. So Shelter, for example, are going to be working out there once a week rather than down the civic offices. Footsteps of Recovery, we've actually got a counselling pod that's going to be put in there. It's downstairs in the training room. It's soundproof. It'll also be somewhere where service users can go and have meetings online, whether that's an interview for a job position, or meeting with other workers that are not linked in with Footsteps Recovery. But we've done that's where a lot of the funding's come from there. So people with substance misuse can speak to their counsellors online in a nice, safe environment. Obviously, we work very closely with housing. We've got great links with them, and we're always speaking back and forth. We've struck up a great relationship with Food Bank, and we've been working with them since we opened. They were one of the first relationships we built, purely because the new managers in the Food Bank and myself were under the same, how do you put it? We come to the same recognition that if people are needing a food bank, there's generally more support issues in the background. It's not just they need a bit of food. There might be budgeting issues, housing issues, substance misuse issues. So if someone's ringing the food bank and they haven't got a support worker, they immediately come through to us. And I know some people go to CAB as well, so it's linked between us both. And we offer that support around that food parcel end to ensure, they're not just getting food, they're getting support around that as well. We linked in with DWP, and we sit on, a lot of partnerships groups, and a Talafro and Palmerston Adder Learning Centre. We both do accredited training. We don't want to step on each other's toes, but we want to promote each other's businesses and what we do in the organisation that benefits. And if we can get people comfortable in our environment and we're supporting them and we can start them on their journey with, education and training, Palmerston or the learning centres in the Vale, the library, can carry on that. And it's an extra step for our service users to go out to a different environment. And it's an extra barrier broken down for them to get into that sort of training and education. Service achievements. We opened in 2020 in April, so right in the mix of apologies. Apologies. My son walked in. Sorry, he's just come home. Sorry. So we've had to adapt. We've had to learn very quickly. You imagine as a support worker, a lot of your skills are interpersonal. They're face to face. You're reading body language, you're reading emotions, and we've had to really adapt to firstly over the phone and WhatsApp and Teams, and being able to do, and not just that, the people we support have had to adapt alongside us. So we sort of learned with them and got through that. Like we say, we assisted and coordinated deliveries with food banks at the start of lockdown, because obviously they were really struggling and the demand was so high, and we offered the support around that. And we've engaged really well with the learning centres, as I previously said, and DWP to significantly ensure that there's support around every aspect. So, for example, people who are on learning courses or get back to work courses can access our services, and it's a self-referral system, but people in the job centres or the learning centres speak to these people, and they can understand when that person's in need of support. And as the statistic says on the bottom, 76% of the people who access our services from April to January had never accessed support before. whether that was because we were more accessible, whether that was because of COVID related. I guess we'll find out if that tradition and that pattern continues. But yeah, it was a staggering stat for me and really surprising when I come into the role. I definitely can't see that, but I think I remember off the top of my head. So we've had around about, it's more than that now, but up until April, there were 976 individuals we supported. Yeah, about 160 of them were homeless. Sorry, I've got terrible eyesight. And a lot of that was benefits as well due to our close relationships with the food bank and DWP. That meant we had a steady stream of people getting referred to us. Same with the employment. The reason that statistic is probably quite high for the service that delivers mostly in a crisis situation is, one, we put an emphasis on being aspirational and being strength focused and really pushing people for their potential. And secondly, we got great links with Palmerston other learning centres and communities for work within the Vale of Glamorgan. And yeah, we signposted a lot, to Mind and TIFE within the Vale of Glamorgan as well, and they've been a real key partner. So I wouldn't say this project is just Pobble success. This is a real success for support in the area. People banding together during a troubling time in COVID and all adapting and working together. And we've been, as Lorraine said, we've been that person in the crisis or at the start of their journey. And all these great services have taken them on as well alongside us, or even continued that support after us.
To reinforce what Nathan has said, we complement other services. I don't think there's anything that we do that replaces anything that's already in existence, because everything we do is about complementing what's already in place and being just that protocol for individuals to access. And like I said, so many, through furlough, through redundancies, through jobs that they thought they had for forever, that it sort of disappeared into the service sector. Those are the individuals that are now coming and needing support. They've never needed support before. Again, those individuals, there's been loads and loads of people who've never used food banks before, and they've never had to think about trying to manage in this way. So I mean, the links with the food bank has been very important, because it is about, the food needing to go to a food bank is usually a symptom of other things. It's not just that immediate need. So I mean, that link is very important to us. And then we've got the next slides are about just some feedback we've had from services that we're working with, like the food bank manager, the Gaynor Williams, DWP partnership manager, and Footsteps Recovery, which is a substance misuse counselling service. So obviously I won't read through all these. They're there, you can read them for yourself, but it's important to us to get the feedback, to learn, because this is a service that we deliver in, but it's a service that's it will continue to evolve, and things that will happen, things that as customers will say they need something different. Well, this service will need to change to maintain those differences, and that's part of our flexibility. Nathan will go on to talk about next steps.
Sorry, I didn't realise I was on mute then. Yeah, like Lorraine said, the importance for us is to keep on learning and to continue to be adaptable and flexible. That's the whole point of the service, to be innovative and to understand our service users, other organisations who have their welfare and their best interest at heart. So one of our next steps is setting up a strategy group with mental health services, substance misuse service, employability, criminal justice systems, educational and training, it's all the people we're working together with already, but we want to really bring back in a strategic group to actually identify, so we can get feedback from the service users. We do exit reviews and LQAs to ensure we're delivering a good quality service. But it'd be interesting to see how people who are accessing Mind, for example, or CAB, or the job centre, what they're saying about us. I think it's important to get honest feedback, and feedback from those services will be great. And not just that, we can all feed into each other's services, and if we do see any new trends or we need to plug a gap, with us all together in a strategic meeting just for those reasons, I'm sure we could do that. Starting to get our Get Involved program, which is a customer participation program that we run in the Vale, which again, like Kate said, is about getting people back into the community. We're doing a bit online and we're doing a bit outdoors at the moment, but hopefully that'll be back up and running, and that'll be a big part of the drop-in. We have ambassadors who are ex-service users, who are part of the team that run the Get Involved program, and they shape everything we do with service user involvement, their inclusion in the service, and make sure the feedback and what we're delivering is a good value. And like we say, if we're missing anything, it's it's there in black and white. We've already opened the service. We've been open for a couple of weeks now, and like I said, again, you're more than welcome to come down whenever you want. Obviously, we've got the training room as well, so we're looking to get a bit more training. We've probably done 6 or 7 sessions in the last couple of weeks, but we're limited on numbers. We can only do 2 people at a time. But as time goes by and restrictions ease, we're looking to open that up and have that as one of the heartbeats of our training room. Also, it's slightly out of range and it's not complete yet, but the counselling, soundproof counselling digital pod is going to be downstairs as well in the training room.
Yeah, and even since this photograph was taken of the training room, we've put in electrical points so that people can, because we can have laptops so that people can sort of have digital use down there, and so it's got more in it than it now than it did when the photograph was taken. So we are moving forward at a pace.
Yeah, so like Lorraine said, we've got a digital inclusion area downstairs. So we've got 6 areas where people can, come down and we can teach them digital learning skills. We got, a projector for training. We got a counselling pod. We've also got a tablet loan scheme. So if people come in and they want to take a tablet home, they just sign a form. It's about trust, and if you empower someone with that trust, it's very unlikely that anything's going to happen, and that's in my experience. So yeah, they get to take that home and they get to play at home and they get to mess around with it. They will tell them they can't break it and press away at any button they can, and people feel comfortable with that.
And that's basically it from us. That like as Nathan has said, we are happy for people to come and visit. Obviously not all at the same time, because we have obviously we've got a risk assessment that we can have certain numbers of people within the building to allow social distancing and all the things we've all learnt over the last 12 months. But yeah, we want people to come and see it. So the next is any questions, and I can see hands up, so I will stop sharing because it's difficult to see anyone when you're sharing.
Okay, thank you very much, Lorraine and Nathan. That was extremely interesting, and I heard this the other day in the agenda conference. I heard some of the presentation tonight, and I'm still learning. It's really good. We do have a couple of questions, and I also have something I'd like to say, but I will go with Councillor Brooks first, if you would like to go.
I think you're on mute.
Councillor Brooks, you're on mute.
Sorry, I thought I'd unmuted. Thank you, Chair. And it's fantastic to actually see this up and running and the service working as it is. It's been an awful long time coming. I know when I've been previous cabinet member as well, we've talked about it. Cabinet members before myself talked about it and how we could develop this. So it's so exciting to actually see this because times have changed and we've got to move and people's needs have changed. And, you know, that obviously the budgets are not there as they were, but it's actually the type of service has changed as well and what people want and their expectations. And to me, is to go to that one place where you can get all that support instead of going to place A, then being sent to place B, then to place C, then say, actually, you're in the wrong place. You need to go back to A now. And all those sort of situations, which if people are in crisis or with mental health, that is an awful lot to cope with and deal with. So I'm absolutely over the moon to see this up and running and the invaluable work that you're carrying out there. And I, for one, would love to actually come down and see it in operation whenever we can. But my question really is how you're linking in with the probation service now as well, because I've worked for an MP for many years as well, and we've often dealt with things like prison leavers at 5 o'clock on a Friday evening, where they suddenly turn up and they've got nowhere to go, and they've just been released from prison. Those sort of issues. And it's something we battled with the probation service, and it really is a question: is are the prisons and the probation service actually working a lot better than they ever used to? Because, you know, these are people who are very, very vulnerable, and it's so easy for them to end up actually just back on that wrong road so quickly if we can't help when they actually need it. So it's just a question around that really, has that relationship developed more, and are they working with yourselves and speaking to each other around these issues?
Yeah, good question. Luckily for me, I managed a couple of projects on Halton Road, which are criminal justice projects, so you know, with ex-offenders. So I had really good relationships with probation, and they're one of the first people we linked in with due just the nature of it being easy for myself as I took over from the one-stop shop. I wouldn't say it's perfect. Some people still slip through the crack, but probation actually refer to us now rather than straight doing a referral form to supporting people. So they recognise in our service. In terms of prison leavers, I think probation are liaising quite closely with housing now. As they always have, but obviously there's a quicker route. Just because of COVID, they've got to be housed. They've got to be found somewhere to stay. So that has taken that aspect away. It's just where people who have had places on release and they've had a relationship breakdown. That's where our most of our communication has happened with probation, and we work really well with probation. They really understand our service and really understand what we can do and what we can do. So that's a real benefit for us, because they don't try and ask us to do things that are, you know, not in our remit. They understand what we do, how we're going to do it, and we can react quickly. So we might get a phone call on a Thursday or Friday night, can someone come down and see you tomorrow, or later today, and we'll answer that call and say of course, and invite them down.
Can I just come in from a housing point of view as well, just to say I think relationships with probation have generally really improved with housing. Probation make up part of because of the pandemic, we had to bring in something called the Central Coordination Cell, which is made up of obviously council housing staff, but also, you know, police, probation, health, all the sort of partners need to be involved, and they come to those meetings were fortnightly up until we've literally changed them to 4 weekly today. So they do attend those, and I think relationships in general have improved. You know, we have got good relationships. However, people do still slip through the gaps, unfortunately. But I think things are a bit better.
Oh, that's great. Thank you for that. As I said, it's just really good to see that improvement there. And also that the fact that you're not sort of 8 till 4 or just 9 to 5, the very fact that people can get hold of you, I think, after hours, I think that's hugely important. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councillor Brooks. Councillor Nugent-Finn, would you like to come in now?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much. And sincerely, thank you very much to Lorraine and Nathan. Nathan, I'm particularly struck by your passion and commitment, just listening to how you're describing your sort of intervention with the service users. It's just absolutely lovely to hear. I've got to say, hats off to you. It's wonderful. I think just a couple of things. When and if we can, at some point in the future, I think it'd be really useful to have a bit of a launch of the service. I have been down. I know where you guys are, and I would love to come and see you. Just in an ad hoc sort of time. But obviously, I'll let you know. But you are so perfectly placed on Holton Road. I know it's obvious, but believe you me, people will still not know. So let's have an event and something positive that we can all look forward to in the future. And I would be, a huge advocate for that. Let's stop people and make sure that they know that you're there. Another thought is could you send all of the referral information and just your basic contact information to every elected member? Because, at some point, every single one of us is experiencing this sort of point of contact with our wards, with our, individuals, families. And again, this is, it's a classic of working together to promote what you're doing so well. Do you have anything specific for veterans? I think that's the only thing I didn't hear. I'm hearing everything else fantastic. You've got, you're linking with Attila Fro, all the adult service users, domestic violence, and all of that. But I wasn't sure about veterans, so apologies if I didn't get that.
No, that's... sorry.
That's okay, Nathan, no problem. And lastly, but again, I'm not to presume, and I would imagine you all are, but are your staff fully equipped to deal with any disclosures and certainly safeguarding issues? Would they know what to do and refer on? As I said, you probably do, but I just want to have the opportunity to mention it. Apart from that, absolute thumbs up. It's a pleasure to have listened to you tonight, and thank you both very much for being so committed and passionate.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, Nathan is a credit to Pobble, and he's exceptionally passionate about the services we deliver. In respect of your last comment, that all staff are level 2 safeguarding trained, it's mandatory requirement. And as Pobble, we changed our training patterns to online very quickly so that we could meet that need. And also we have also got good links with safeguarding teams within all local authorities, and make referrals as and when required.
Sure.
We are hoping, our health and safety department allowing, we would like to do a launch probably in July, because then I think we should have got through the early stages of opening up, and we should be quite settled by July. But I won't commit 100%, but I think July would be a good time. We're opening up more and more as every day goes by. So we've had our risk assessment systems in place. We're allowing numbers in according to whatever legislation is in place around COVID restrictions. And then as they open up, we're opening up further. In respect of veterans, a very good point. We haven't specifically mentioned veterans. They're not excluded, and we do have veterans who access all our services, and we always have had. We don't have anything specific. We are aware that there was a veteran service who delivered support, so we wouldn't want to duplicate that in any way. But obviously maybe we need to form links with that service. So I remember them coming to the Supporting People Planning Group.
Yeah, so, exactly.
Yeah, so thanks for bringing that to attention. There's probably something that you probably missed, so that that's fantastic.
No problem, Nathan. That's what we're here for. No problem. I'm old enough to remember Sprug.
Yes, and
I think Kate does as well, but I'm going back to Llan my days. So this is, I live and breathe this. It must be I remember supporting people, revenue grants and supporting people, and oh my goodness, I'm really old. But no, thank you very much for that, everybody. That's, very encouraging.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, no problem. Mike, are you wanting to come in on that?
Yes, please. I just wanted to amplify the point that was made that it's a service outside of the civic offices, and I think that's crucial to this sort of type of service. Many of our clients clearly, would prefer not to go into a more formal, established setting like a civic office, and I think that's one of the great benefits of working with a third sector provider that has all the links and all the accesses. Also, I'm sure Lorraine and Nathan, they advocate as well for their clients. Clearly, a number of their clients will have touched on services in the past and perhaps have not got the outcomes that they want or need or deserved. And I think that is a crucial factor, I think, in terms of the relationships that the POBL will develop with their clients. Just to pick up, I think, in terms of two issues with the safeguarding and the armed forces comment. In terms of safeguarding, clearly from a commissioning perspective, the supporting people team obviously ensure that the safeguarding protocols and processes are in place with all of our commission providers, and we do monitor those regularly. Even though we know that many of our third sector providers go above and beyond what we would deem to be necessary. So that's just to reassure members that those protocols are in place and the relationships with other statutory agencies, information sharing agreements and the like, are in place. Secondly, in terms of the armed forces contact, clearly housing do have very strong links with the armed forces contact within Tony Curlis's team, and we've developed some over the last 12-18 months. I forget the coordinator's name off the top of my head, but I know, as Lorraine has mentioned, we are ensuring that armed forces link is brought to the attention of all the agencies, all the third sector providers that we work with. So it's just to reassure you that yes, we are aware, and it will probably be really useful. Thank you, Councillor Williams, Abby Warburton. It would be really useful, I think, for Nathan just to have a quick chat with Abby over the coming weeks, just so that any referrals that come in with an armed forces background, obviously we can signpost or deal with directly. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mike. I've had a message from Councillor Perks. She has a question, so I'll bring you up now. I'll bring you in now, Councillor.
Thank you, Millie. I just wanted to ask, so it's fantastic that we've got this service in Barry and that it's all joined up and, sort of really useful to have it on the main thoroughfare. I just wondered what provision we have in the rest of the Vale, whether any of the staff that are based in Halton Road, whether they're doing peripatetic work and going to other parts of the Vale as well, just to ensure that, people who can't afford to come in, that they still get the same level of service as well. Thank you.
Yeah, we obviously at the moment a lot of stuff is online, other than for people who are undergoing training or extreme vulnerable or crisis situations. But we will be opening up definitely in Penarth and definitely in Lantwick Major. So hopefully, probably the job centre in Penarth at the moment we're thinking, and maybe a shop front in Lantwick. I won't say who with because they might not want to, within the early part of discussions, but hopefully soon we'll be in the Lantwick Major Town Centre area with an organisation, and we can work out there. And if needs, changes and we need to go more rural and, maybe to Cowbridge and other rural areas, Ogmore. I know when they were doing the pilot scheme, there was a massive rise in people who needed support in the Cowbridge area. So they put in a Cowbridge drop-in, once a month at a local church, I believe it was back then. So yeah, we'd look to react and adapt to what's happening geographically, and definitely in Penarth and Landsworth within the coming months.
Thank you. That's really good to hear. Quite a few years ago, I used to do a bit of peripatetic work for the Vale of Glamorgan Council as well, around the rest of the Vale. So yeah, it's really good to hear that you know, Barry's going to have the main centre there, which is fantastic, but you're going to be in the other parts of the Vale as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't see anybody else with their hands up. So I just say I've got a couple of things I'd like to say. Well, the first thing I'd like to say is that I am extremely impressed with how you guys have been coping since April last year. 76% of people that not had support previously, you must have been rushed off your feet. So you have done an extremely amazing job in the really difficult situation that this last year and a bit has been. So well done. And I think all of us here will echo that. I am interested though in slide 11, your figures. Again, extremely impressive. But I want to look mainly at the mental health figure, 302. The success has been 302, 100% success. How have most of those referrals been received? Have they been through self-referral? Have they been through other agencies? Or is this something that's been picked up on while you've helped out for some other reason? That kind of thing.
It's mostly been picked up on support, to be honest. We've had a couple of referrals from Mind and we work well with Mind, but obviously if they're accessing Mind and the community mental health team already and, you know, liaising with their GP, they're probably, you know, they're obviously not in a great place, but they're probably, you know, maybe as good as they're going to get at that present moment. And maybe they just need a bit more support and they're a bit more anxious and around their current situation. And that can, you know, also be down as success with us due to, you know, their mental health improving because we're helping around an issue that's triggering their mental health. But a lot of the stuff's come from just conversations where, you know, people have just come out with, I've never, you know, taken medication, I've never been to the GP, the gym shut, you know, that's a common theme. And, you know, their mental health is obviously during COVID as well and lockdown, their mental health is gone down badly. Maybe they liked a couple of drinks on the weekends. You know, it was various, but their mental health really dipped. And it was sometimes it wasn't even just the doctors. It was about putting them in connection with maybe peer support out there, self-help guidebooks, training things, different things to occupy their mind. So if they were fortunate to have a garden, talk to them about gardening and open that up to them. And with mental health, I'd never say we could have like a success, but people generally improve. You know, no one really some people do, and that's out of your hands some of the time, but generally people improve just by talking, just to having an open ear, especially in COVID with the restrictions where people weren't going out, and just to have someone over the phone or over WhatsApp or Teams and seeing that interaction with someone, and people coming down really down and depressed, and, you know, not really talking to anyone, not engaging with anyone. We've just built that, you know, try and instill a bit of confidence in that person and show a bit of compassion and empathy for that situation they're in, and try and direct them in the right way for people who are far more qualified than us to, you know, actually deal with that then.
Wonderful, thank you. I want to also echo a few comments that have been made tonight. I walk past the Pobble office shop on Holton Road quite often, as I only literally live just off Dockview Road. So I'm only round the corner, and I pass it quite often, and I've seen it from when it was first being set up to how it's now been finished, and it's drastically different to how, obviously. And it looks like a very welcoming atmosphere, and I would be very interested in having a visit to that place. And again, in the agenda conference, we were told that you were looking at doing a launch last year, weren't you? But obviously COVID restrictions. So as soon as restrictions allow, I really would love to see that launch go ahead finally.
Fantastic.
Okay, one more person wanting to speak now, and that's Councillor Andrew Parker. Go ahead, Councillor.
Councillor Parker, can you hear us?
Councillor Parker, can you hear us? Oh, the hand's gone down. Okay.
No,
Hello, is that you, Councillor Parker?
you can't hear me, I don't think.
Right.
Yeah, we can hear you, Councillor Parker.
Hello?
Can you hear us?
Hello, I'm saying goodbye. Yes, I can hear you. It's just to say I have to leave the meeting now. Okay.
Oh,
Goodbye.
right. Okay, Councillor
You
Parker,
can
you have
know.
the meeting.
Thank you,
Thank you for letting
Councillor.
us know. Goodbye.
Bye bye.
Okay, so if no one else has any other questions regarding that item, I'd like to say thank you again for you three attending and move on to the next item on the agenda.
Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you very much.
No
Thanks for
problem.
listening. Thank you.
I would love to hear some updates from you at some point.
Wonderful.
Okay.
Thank you. Bye now.
Bye.
Have a
Thanks.
nice
Bye.
evening.
Bye.
The next item is reports from the Director of Environment and Housing, agenda item 6, antisocial behaviour and social cohesion, joint working between social landlords and community safety. And if I remember rightly, Debbie Gibbs is taking the lead on this. Lovely to see you again, Debbie. If you'd like to go ahead.
Hi, good evening everyone. Nice to see you all again. Thank you for the opportunity to come and present some further work of the community safety team within the local authority and obviously the wider partnership that we do work within. The first report that I'm going to take you through this evening is around the antisocial behaviour and social cohesion and working with social landlords and obviously how that touches on them and also the wider partnership arrangements. For those of you that will be familiar with community safety, you'll know that we are based within Barry Police Station as a team, just to improve our information sharing and our understanding of community safety issues and cohesion. Two of the themes that we are responsible for is the management of ASB, the antisocial behaviour and community cohesion. We work with a wide range of partners, just due to the nature of the work that we do. Each case is different, so that will depend on who we actually need to work with to find the best solution to those problems, no matter what they may be. We are sort of work within a sort of framework, a partnership framework, and we do report to the Safe Vale partnership in terms of our governance, as well as the local authority for our work. In terms of managing the antisocial behaviour and community cohesion, we have got a range of meetings that we report to enable to effectively problem solve those issues, and we call that the problem solving group. Members of those meetings will include all the social landlords, including our own housing stock, South Wales Police, Fire and Rescue, social services, youth services, and whatever partner really that is relevant to some of the issues that we're experiencing at that time. Obviously, over the last year, we've had a lot of disruption within the team, and we have managed to move all of these meetings onto a Teams platform now, so that we haven't allowed that to impact on our day-to-day activity of running the unit or working with partner agencies. As you will see from the report, antisocial behaviour in the Vale saw a massive increase in reports last year. So from the first quarter, the team dealt with 1,824 antisocial behaviour incidents. So that was the significant increase of 256% based on the incidents from the same period the previous year. What we've done is included within that graph table below a sort of an update on where the links are with the registered social landlord, so you get to see a sort of a feel of where those incidents lie, which sort of demonstrates the joint work that is needed to effectively problem solve those issues. As with any change that we have within the team, COVID has had a especially significant impact on us. Obviously having to adapt to home working in the main for some people, looking at platforms, looking at different ways, it did put a lot of pressure on the team to sort of cope with those challenging demands, but also the increase in incidents as well. So it was a very difficult time for us in order to do those. Most of the increase came as a result of COVID-19 regulation breaches, or COVID breaches as we like to refer to them, and that was for a large amount of neighbours reporting neighbours for breaches, for having people gathering in properties, for having house parties and things like that, which unfortunately was a reality, not just in the Vale but right across Wales. That was a problem. So we've included some further graphs then for later on in that year, so that you can see so some of the trends that we did have within community safety, and some of the figures around that. In terms of our joint work with the registered social landlords, we have always worked with them effectively, but as with anything else, you always need to challenge yourself and challenge the way we work to try and find improvements in how we do that, that will make it better for our tenants, better for our wider communities, and easier for staff to manage those issues. Some of the joint work we have listed within the report, and that includes sort of joint visits that we will do with RSLs, and we will write joint acceptable behaviour contracts with them, so that we can show that consistent joined up approach right from the beginning. In some of the other areas that we've developed, we've looked at sort of joint visits. Obviously, in the beginning of lockdown, for safety reasons, that had to be delayed, and we had to transfer some of that work to joint telephone conversations. So it really cemented the trust between sort of community safety, police, and registered social landlords that we would identify a lead agency to take that work forward, and it's really cemented relationships in terms of bringing to the forefront that trust element. In terms of sort of joint working, we've had some success, and one of the examples that we've referred to in our report is around the work in Carlion Road in Dinas Powys. Significant joint work took place in that area, and for those that may not be aware, it is a community that is made up of registered social landlord, but also a new housing estate that has been built, and general issues included bringing two sort of different ways of life together, and not really understanding how that area would function as a community. So lots of different activities have taken place down there in terms of community engagement, bringing different partners there. There's been sort of skips provided by the social landlord down there so that people could get rid of rubbish to stop fly tipping. We included a deployable camera from the local authority so that we could monitor that area and sort of identify antisocial behaviour, but also identify where reports had been made that it wouldn't be classed as antisocial behaviour, because some of the issues we have sometimes around educating people on what antisocial behaviour isn't. So we still receive quite a number of reports regarding the sort of young people playing football on a grass verge or something, and those types of issues, and we were quite keen that we sort of work with our community so that they understood that that would be perfectly acceptable to us. You know, and we wouldn't take action for that sort of behaviour. The deployable cameras have been quite successful for us in managing antisocial behaviour, and it has allowed us to identify perpetrators of antisocial behaviour in some circumstances. It has allowed us to provide that sort of better response to those communities, and as I say, it's also allowed us that opportunity to respond to areas where we don't see it as antisocial behaviour. The biggest issue that we've seen through COVID in terms of this area of work is around neighbours reporting neighbours. I think COVID, in its fact, is made more people stay at home, and has experienced some noise issues, whereas in normal times school children would be at school, people would be at work, but with everybody being home for longer periods of times neighbours would experience an increase in noise that they weren't necessarily used to, and in some cases they would think that that noise was a deliberate sort of issue, and not just normal living noise because people were home for longer. So we've seen an increase in that type of behaviour, and also an increase in people reporting neighbours for smoking cannabis, and the smell, whether or not they can smell it through walls, adjoining walls of properties, or whether people are smoking it out in their garden. So there's been a lot of time invested in working with people that are reporting to try and understand the issues, and try and support them as best we can in very difficult situation. That they continue to still be an issue at the present, and we continue to look at that. One of the pieces of work we have taken forward since this report was done was that we're working on a piece of work with RSLs and South Wales Police to look at our response to cannabis smoking, and that joined up approach that we can all adopt, and all follow the same process and policies so that we can provide that better service, or how we can manage people's expectations about what can and can't be done in those circumstances. That work hasn't finished at present, but you know, it is an ongoing result of the pandemic and what we're currently working on. And one last thing I wanted to mention is that we've identified, you know, we rely heavily on individuals in organisation, on their knowledge and being available to help us in terms of gathering information, exchanging that information, updating actions. And one of the issues through the pandemic has been when we haven't been able to contact people, and that reliance on that people sharing that information. And that's one of the gaps really, is not having any sort of system that we can sort of share that information more easily, so that we're not relying on individuals' personal knowledge on cases. So in terms of the team, it's been especially challenging the last year. We don't see that demand sort of reducing anytime soon, due to the current restrictions that we're currently in, and obviously more people are going to be home over the summer period, so we do plan on a weekly basis where we put resources and how we manage that in partnership. So that work will continue, I would imagine, but certainly for the next 6 months. We have included the case study for Carlian, just to sort of identify in more detail than what I've said about some of the joint work that we have done. So I'm not sure if anyone's got any questions for me on some of the work we've done around antisocial behaviour and cohesion.
Councillor Brooks and Councillor Aviott. I'll go with Councillor Brooks first.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I mean, thank you for the update, Deb. That's it's really great, and I agree, it's been a huge challenge for yourselves, obviously, over this last year in particular. It's just, you mentioned something around that sort of pool of knowledge about who to contact and the other sort of agencies and other people who can actually help support yourselves, and that you haven't actually got that information sort of set centrally. It's is, has that been recognised elsewhere in the council, and how are you going to be able to do that? Because yeah, I think it's vital to have to rely on somebody's personal knowledge. That's great when that person is around, but obviously they're not always there.
Yeah, if I can answer that, one of the issues that have been flagged in the Safer Vale strategic plan is around working together is one of our top priorities, and we have put it as a priority for the whole local authority, or partnership I should say, in terms of the exchange of information across the whole breadth of community safety work. So it is a priority for us, but obviously in the last year other things have taken priority for us in terms of our operational service. So hopefully now that we've got a lot of processes and teams are aware of sort of new things that we're currently faced with, we'll be able to develop some more of the strategic work that we had got planned. It isn't an easy one to solve, in fairness, so we will be looking at a range of different options that would be available to us.
Okay, thanks, that's great.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Brooks. I've had to turn my camera off because my sound was breaking up. So I'm just going to pull Councillor Avia in now, and I'll see if I can get my Wi-Fi sorted.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, thank you, Deborah. Just wondering if have the general public got access to Safer Vale? You know, have they got a phone number, or do they just go through 101 and they get referred to you? And especially as councillors, like, can we refer them to you, or do we just ask people to ring 101?
Yeah, it's a good question, really. It's something that we try to improve our engagement with communities. If residents or communities want to ask for advice about a particular situation, or they're unsure about anything, they are encouraged to ring us here at Barry Police Station, and our number's easily available. But obviously I can send that out to all members so that you know that. If they are looking to report antisocial behaviour, then they would need to either report that to 101. They can email 101 now, which a lot of residents are unaware of, that they can actually email to report, which we encourage, because we listen to our residents, and they always complain to me about the length of time it takes sometimes to get through on 101. So we do suggest that in some circumstances that they can email if it doesn't need a quick response. And obviously some antisocial behaviour needs to be reported to the local authority, so around some noise issues, sort of graffiti, that type of information would be reported to the local authority. So areas of where we notice that there are issues, members quite often come do contact me and ask for help or information. And then a lot of time, once we've done some research, it does show that the reports aren't being made via the community about this issue. So in a lot of circumstances, we do go out and we will send a letter through the door advising people of how they can report incidents of antisocial behaviour and which are the correct lines, or how they can email and those types of things. So I think over the last year that has really increased in terms of our letting people know how they can report issues.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Avia. Mike, do you want to come in on that?
Yeah, it's just to pick up on that point of awareness of the service. Safer Vale obviously is a collaboration of different agencies, so it's under the banner of Safer Vale. Obviously, Community Safety, Deb's team, obviously act as coordinators and bringing different partners and agencies together to try and resolve issues and problems. Clearly, we had a successful strategy up until last summer, I suppose, where we ran the highly successful, hugely successful event at Barry, annually up at Barry Police Station in relation to inviting you know, residents in to come and see what the agencies were doing, pass information on, and obviously for us it gave us an ideal opportunity to engage and to find out what people felt about our service, as well as the police finding out how the public felt about theirs, and fire service, and so on and so forth. It is the next report that Deb is going to refer to is the strategy, and you'll see in that report that there is a huge emphasis on that communication and messaging. So I think you're right. We've identified that there is confusion around Safer Vale. What is it? And if you remember, when we were developing the strategy itself, we had an open day event at the civic offices and a number of people there. It was a key issue for both officers and members of the public, a general confusion around that. So we will be working, as I say, in terms of developing those areas. I think it's fair to say that Deb's team really haven't had 10 minutes to breathe for the last year, both in terms of not just the day work that they're involved with, but then the weekend work, a lot of the work that we're doing around the resorts, you know, resort management on weekends and things. So other things have taken priority, but we are mindful of it, and it is something that we're acutely aware needs improving.
Thank you, Mike. Councillor Hanks, if you'd like to go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, Debbie. I just wanted to ask a question regarding CCTV. I just wondered how much you're using the banks of cameras in the Bridgend area, and how much you're relying on the mobile units. Thanks.
Okay, so the mobile units that we've currently got in the Vale have been really successful for us in terms of managing the current ASB that we've got. I think one of the issues that we've got with static cameras is that many of them that are in the Vale were installed back in 1998, and as we know, things change over a period of time. So whilst we were sort of investigating alternative ways around CCTV and that, we did some research on deployable cameras, and from the local authorities point of view, and South Wales Police as well, we liked that option where we could move cameras as we needed to across the local authority, because we couldn't afford to put a camera in every single location, and it's something really that we didn't see that would be a benefit in the wider long-term solution. So in terms of the deployable cameras, what it has allowed us to do in the Vale is to respond very quickly to some of the issues that we have got, and we've started to see some of the benefits of that by installing them, being able to review, identify perpetrators of ASB, look to cross-reference that with wider community reports, and the team here within the station within community safety actually review those cameras and take action straight away. And I think part of the work of deployable cameras has really sort of given us scope to sort of challenge us on the way we currently do CCTV. So that work with Bridgend at the moment is currently under review, and we're looking at the options that best suit the local authority going forward.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you for that, Debbie. I now have Councillor Bird wanting to come in. Go ahead, Councillor Bird.
Thanks. Just a quick one, Deb. How many deployable cameras have we got, and have we got plans to get more? And can you give us a rough idea of their cost and their running costs? Because I think it is the way forward, definitely.
Yes. So currently in the Vale of Glamorgan, we've got 9 deployable cameras that we manage, and they are sort of coordinated through the community safety base at Barry Police Station. They are sort of deployed across the local authority. The process, we have got a process in how we allocate those cameras and where we discuss those issues, and that is in partnership with the police. And obviously we engage with local members as well on those decisions, and then obviously we then engage with the local community on those decisions that we take. In terms of the cost of those cameras, we are looking at current cost of £5,000 per camera, and then it's a 5,000 revenue cost for that camera, but that covers us for a 5-year period. So you know, you're looking at 10,000 per camera over that 5-year period. We don't and haven't yet factored in the sort of that resource to community safety yet. We wanted to try these cameras as a pilot really in the Vale of Glamorgan, just to see how effective they were, and to give us that benchmark to go forward. So I think that in terms of the Vale, we installed them, they were first installed last October 2020. Okay. So we're starting to get that data and sort of a better understanding of the you know, the benefits of them. In terms of a deployable camera against a fixed camera, the quality of the image are actually better on our deployable cameras than what we've currently got. So, but again, with technology changes all the time. So the cameras that we've got for deployable, you don't see a difference in quality because they're deployable and not fixed.
Yeah, no, I really do agree with you. I think they are the way forward. And as you say, technology moves on really quickly. Hopefully they'll get cheaper, easier to run, easier to deploy. And yeah, I would like to see the council use more of them if we need to.
Thank you for that, Debbie and Councillor Bird. I now have Councillor Perks wanting to come in. Go ahead, Councillor.
Oh, hello. I just wanted to say that we'd had some sort of quite upsetting antisocial behaviour on Pencoitry Fields recently, when the you know, tiny forest has been actually burnt by youths, and I just wondered whether that would be something that the Safer Vale team would look into, who, you know, sort of have done that, you know, and how we find out what's happening as a, you know, sort of the councillors for that area, of what they're, you know, sort of how far they're progressing and things like that, really. Thank you.
Yeah, so we did receive that report that had come through, and I think one of the things that COVID has done is sort of cemented our relationship with our colleagues in visible services. So we've done quite a lot of work with our Parks and Open Spaces team, as well as our enforcement team in the council, because of the increase in antisocial behaviour around those areas. We were really disappointed to see that in Pencoitry Fields, you know, it was just, there was no reason for it, you know. Unfortunately, we have seen similar incidents taking place across a number of our parks in the Vale of Glamorgan. There's been issues with skate parks. There's been a lot of issues with graffiti at the moment, how we're trying to manage that is working in partnership with the police, sharing information, sharing intelligence, looking at you know, making sure our parks teams are aware of signs to look out for, in terms of giving us that sort of an earlier indication that there's antisocial behaviour going on, and not necessarily waiting for residents to report issues, and that, you know, to try and improve that intelligence sharing amongst agencies beforehand. That work is ongoing. Obviously we are in a police station. My team do attend daily briefing now with the police, and that meeting takes place every morning for us Monday to Friday at 8:30, and a member of our council team will attend that meeting, and we will review all the incidents that have taken place in the 24 hours previous, and we'll look then to see who we need to engage with very quickly, whether it be housing, visible services, or if there's a vulnerability with an individual, it will be social services, just so that we can get that information out very quickly and look for a solution. In terms of Pencoitry, that is still under investigation, you know, so we're just waiting for the updates on it. But I think it was, you know, there was a lot of sort of community and settlement around it, and wanting something done. So, you know, it's just really sad to see all these things happening.
Yeah, sort of hopefully with the community, you know, sort of the councillors there, perhaps be able to get some of the trees, some new trees sort of planted there, and, you know, sort of not sort of give in to the antisocial behaviour as well. And I think it's important that, you know, sort of different areas like Pencoitry and other areas have things like this there, and that we don't sort of let antisocial behaviour defeat us, really.
Okay, Mike, I think you want to come in on that one.
Yes, just very briefly. Obviously, you know, we're seeing across the Vale mindless acts of vandalism. Graffiti is on the increase. If I've noticed in Holton Road, we've seen graffiti appearing on lots of signs. I mean, clearly, I hope as things open and that some of our younger people are distracted by other things that they would have been doing, you know, whether that's sports activities or whatever, that it isn't a pattern that we see consistently going forward. But one of the things I'd say about our approach, I think we need to be mindful that on the one hand, yes, we've got the stick approach, you know, which is identifying individuals and taking that sort of action. I think also we have that is hand in hand then with a preventative approach, perhaps using our youth services team about engaging with young people in certain areas and trying to work with those young people to understand what the issues are and sort of try and I suppose educate, motivate and move people away from that type of activity. I'm not saying it easy, and I'm not saying we've got enough resources to address it all. However, I think, you know, it is a parallel approach. It is about the policing. It is about the enforcement. On the other hand, I think we have to acknowledge, and I think it was mentioned earlier about people's well-being, mental health, and those other issues. I think the youth have been just as affected, perhaps, by some of the issues, and I know I've spoken to some members about that recently. But yeah, you know, I think whilst the work that we do from a crime prevention perspective is important, equally there's also the work that we do to try and stop it becoming a crime in the first instance, and some of the distraction work that we do.
Thank you, Mike. Does anybody else have any other questions? I'm not seeing any more hands up. Okay, so Debbie, there are a couple of things I just want to say. The first thing is around the graffiti. We were talking in the agenda conference about this, weren't we? And you were saying that you have a database where you take photos and keep records so that you are able to keep a record of tags, for example. And this helps you to catch the culprits eventually. Do you know what the average kind of cost for the cleanup every year is?
Oh, unfortunately I wouldn't know that cost, because that would sit within our cleansing team within the local authority.
Oh, yes, I don't know what I was thinking, sorry.
Yeah, but I would think that you know that has seen an increase, certainly over the last 6 months. Yeah. It's a difficult thing for the team to manage, because obviously resources are that we can only clean on council property. So it's a challenging thing, because we try to aim to keep the Vale looking environmentally friendly, and obviously graffiti, fly tipping, all adds to people's feeling unsafe, and that it's not a safe environment for people to live. So it's something that's, you know, very important to the Vale of Glamorgan Council to do that. Hence why we work with our cleansing team to look to identify it, you know, and take action where we can.
Okay. Thank you. That's basically all I wanted to ask. So I just want to, Rachel has got a hand up, and I'll bring you in a minute, Rachel. But I just want to say thank you again to you and your team, because this has been a trying time for everybody, but you guys seem to be going above, beyond and above, you know, and it is very, very much appreciated. Your team have been under a lot of pressure for this past year, so thank you very much. Councillor Nugent-Finn, if you'd like to come in now.
Thank you, Chair. It's just very briefly to tag on to Deborah and Mike, what we're saying about the redeployable CCTV and Councillor Bird. This, yeah, it's definitely the way forward, and it's. I'd like it to be used for a lot of the antisocial behaviour and also fly tipping. Appreciate fully the costs attached to it, but you know, I feel if it was attached to a penalty, it would be paying for itself at some point. It's definitely the way forward. Very saddened to see what happened at Pencoitra. Yeah, it's the balance between you know, keeping things green and interactive, but you know, how on earth we tackle this is appalling. But redeployable for me is the way forward. I've been following it on a lot of English local authorities, and they are making huge inroads. So I just want to know, I'm a huge supporter and advocate, and anything we can do as a committee to support it, let us know. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you for that, Rachel. Go ahead, Mike. Mike, you're on mute.
Sorry, it's just to pick up. The council have agreed to provide one of the deployable cameras to our cleansing team, and that is being used specifically for fly tipping and other covert type activity.
Great, thank you for that, Mike. Much appreciated.
That is wonderful to hear, because fly tipping is a very big issue at the moment. I can't tell you how many Facebook posts I've seen on different groups from more rural areas of the Vale, and also around Dinas Powys area as well. That I've seen a lot of just pictures of people. They've dumped things and nobody knows because it's in such an out of the way place. So it is
I'm reporting it 3 or 4 times a week. Every week I do 3 or 4 reports on fly tipping. It's appalling. And it's not small amounts either. Sometimes it's lorryfuls.
Oh, I know. We've had an issue around here years ago in the back lanes around by my place. But since the Alley-gate scheme came in, that has been dramatically reduced. So this is a good idea, these mobile cameras, these deployable ones. So thank you. I don't think we've got any more questions on that. So I'm just going to ask, will we move the recommendations?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, happy to second that.
Wonderful. So the recommendations have been moved, and now we're on to agenda item 7. Which is an update on the Community Safety Strategy Plan. Again, this is Debbie, and I believe Mike will also be saying something as well. So, Debbie, if you'd like to start, thank you.
Yeah, so again, the second report this evening will focus on some of the joint work that we're doing in terms of our strategy and our action plan for the Safer Vale Partnership. As you know, I think we came to Scrutiny last year to present the draft strategy for the partnership, and so some of the work that we had done to create that strategy in terms of engagement with community, engagement with partners, engagement with some of our staff that work within the organisations, so that we could come up with a more informed plan going forward of how to tackle some of the community safety issues that we've got within the Vale of Glamorgan. Unfortunately, because of COVID, we were delayed in terms of launching our strategy. In normal circumstances, organisations would approve the strategy and the associated plans with that strategy, and then we would look to formally launch that within agencies and also our communities as well. Unfortunately, that didn't take place, and our adoption of that strategy was delayed due to other operational demands on teams at that point in time. So we are slightly behind in terms of you know, where we would have liked to have been. However, we have made significant progress on some of the things that we have prioritised. I think so within, if I just recap over the strategy and some of the priorities that we wanted to work towards, and the first priority was around preventing and reducing crime and disorder, and looking to, as well as sort of enforce from a policing side of view. The partnership is very committed to that prevention element that Mike has spoke about earlier, to try and stop it from happening in the first place, because that's better for the individuals, better for our communities, and obviously it's more cost effective for agencies. The second one was around engagement, and I think, as we've mentioned earlier, one of the big issues for the partnership was around the branding and people's awareness of what that partnership stood for, what we were looking to achieve, who actually made up that partnership, and we needed to sort of increase people's feeling of belonging in our communities as well, and being proud of where we live, and feeling safe. Thirdly, it was around safeguarding. I think in most departments now that we've got within the local authority, safeguarding is you know, a key thing for all of us, and we've all got that duty to you know, look at safeguarding sort of processes that we need to adopt, and share that information to make our most vulnerable more safer in communities. And lastly was around working together, and that was about strengthening our partnership arrangements that we've got within the Vale, you know, that will sort of improve partnership problem solving, looking at pooling budgets, and these types of things that would really cement our partnership and take it really to that next level. And we felt as a partnership those were the 4 key areas in which we needed to develop. From that point then, we developed the action plan of how we would achieve those objectives. So as I said, we were delayed in formally adopting our strategy, so that took place later than what we'd originally thought. And part of the review of the partnership sort of determined that we needed to have an operational group set up in the Vale of Glamorgan that would look at all the community safety issues as a whole across the Vale, and look at that sort of doing level in order to make some of these actions a reality and to drive forward progress. At the moment, I actually chaired that group, and during COVID, as you can imagine, probation, South Wales Police, local authorities, we all had sort of a change in the way of working. We all had added pressures. So we took the approach that we would sort of share information via email updates. So we created templates for people to populate so that we could share that information more timely, more effective, but not taking huge amounts of time in having formal meetings. That worked especially well, and it was through that process that we've been able to drive some of the updates forward, just as an appreciation of everybody's time, really. Normal meetings did start again back in October, and then following the lockdown again reverted back to email updates in January 2021. The next operational group meeting, or virtual live meeting, is due to take place tomorrow. So we're back on track now with our meetings, and I think it's been quite clear that there's a consistent buy-in from all agencies in this way of working, and we've got really good input from all the agencies involved. In terms of what we've achieved, that will you can see some of that work in Appendix A, but just to bring to your attention some of the things that we haven't been able to do as of yet, but we have started to scope out some of the work to achieve them. Is one sort of development was that we noticed that there was a gap really in communities' knowledge and awareness when moving into a new home. So obviously it can be quite exciting for some people moving into a new home, a new area, but they may not have information to services, and they may not know how to report issues to the right area. So there's what we wanted to do in partnership is to create a pack where we would provide new home owners or people moving in, tenants, with the information pack of helpful information really on their area, on their community, and really that we wanted to keep that area a nice antisocial behaviour free area. So whilst that has been delayed, it is back on the agenda and we are looking at that. The other issue that has been delayed is that, as Mike mentioned beforehand, whilst we did our engagement work in developing the strategy, it became so quite apparent that people didn't know what the Safer Vale partnership was. So we were looking at ways to increase sort of people's awareness of it. And I think for those that follow Twitter or Facebook, you might be aware that we've got a Facebook page for Safer Vale and also a Twitter feed as well. So a lot of the work that we do currently will be advertised on those platforms. But one of the things they wanted to develop was a short clip, a short video of what the partnership stood for. So that is still a priority for us. And I think as things ease now and we're able to do more in our communities, that will be something that we'll look to develop now over the summer period. I think the other appendix that we've got, which has been a successful initiative for the partnership, is the community safety highlight report that we produce now on a monthly basis. So one of the areas that people told us was they wanted to know more about what we did. And at the beginning of COVID, we saw these big increases. We were having all this work and we wanted to try and let people know what we were doing, that we were still operating, that we were still available, but also let them know about the demands of some of the team. So we started the highlight report last April. 2020, and we've done we've done a highlight report every month since. That report gets shared sort of internally with the council. It gets shared on our social media platforms. We send it out to people that are signed up to Vale Connect. We share it with agencies and so on, just so that we make people aware of some of the work that we have done. I think it was from February this year, we looked to how we could further develop this concept, because we'd had positive feedback from people that had seen it, and we wanted to try and challenge ourselves to sort of include additional information. And so we sort of developed it into a closer look. So we identify a particular area of community safety and we'll focus on it. So quick information really, but more in detail than what the highlight report had done previously. So the one that is included within your appendix is around the antisocial behaviour and community cohesion. Since then, we've done a closer look at the violence against women, domestic abuse and sexual violence, which was last month, and the May's edition is focusing on hate crime. So we look to sort of develop that to give further information out to people. We're always welcome to suggestions. So if anybody has anything they would like us to focus on, we would take that feedback gladly and look to incorporate it. I think in terms of some of the data that we've developed within the team, this has proved really sort of a good result for us in terms of identifying hotspot areas, knowing where our issues are and sharing that data with partner agencies as well, so that we can start to look at long-term solutions to some of these issues. Beforehand, we relied heavily on police data, which wasn't always easy for us to extract, or it would only tell half of the story. So now we've developed systems within the team on how to look at the wider picture of some of the things that we cover within the team. think I wasn't going to plan to go through all of the action plan this evening. I was, happy to take any questions off members really if on any of the items. But at the moment, considering the high demands that we have had in the team, I think we've done quite well to get where we are. But understandably, there are further things that we know we need to do, and hopefully over the next few months we can develop that further.
Okay, thank you, Debbie. Again, I really want to say thank you to you and your team, because it has been a challenging year. And so there are going to be things that have slipped because you're not able to do everything you want. So I think we can all understand that and just applaud the fact that you have managed to get as much done as you have. So pass that on to your team and say thank you. I don't see anybody's hands up on that, so I'm going to go to Mike now.
Thank you. Just to pick up on a couple of things, clearly we've learned a lot over the last 12 months. The action plan that was developed was finally approved in September, but was probably developed a good 6 months before then, in terms of those conversations and discussions we were having when we were all 120 people in a room. I think what's important for us, and we certainly will be doing from a strategic board and from an operational board, is to keep the action plan under review, because there will be new actions that we hadn't thought of and weren't an issue when we were developing the action plan. So I think that's just to reassure members that we will be looking to review that action plan in the light of COVID, and that will, as I say, cover off some of the issues that Deb has mentioned. The other point I would make out, and it's really Safer Vale community safety, grew out of the Crime and Disorder Act in '98, I think it was. And at that time, there were a lot of resources ploughed in and put into community safety response, whether that be through the Home Office and national government and, the police and local authorities. And what we've seen probably over the last 10 years, certainly, is a reduction in, as resources tighten, a reduction in the scope, I suppose, of community safety teams. I mean, what has been pleasing in the Vale is that we've continued to fund, as a local authority, we've continued to fund community safety. And it is recognised and was recognised by Welsh Government, certainly in meetings that Deb and I have been in terms of a bit of an exemplar, I suppose, in terms of community safety response. The message and importance of community safety, I think, is starting, is being heard now, because, and it's been amplified clearly because of the last period of time. Welsh Government have now set up a strategic partnership for Wales. I'm not sure if Deb has been to a number of those meetings. I'm sure she's been involved in discussions with officers as part of that, which is looking at a review of community safety, and hopefully we'll have the ear of ministers as we move into a new administration, and clearly ministers having their own issues in their own local authority areas that they've been addressing recently. So it's one of the things I think that we as an organisation and we as a Safer Vale partnership will obviously be looking to lobby Welsh Government in relation to resources, as well as the PCC, clearly, who have a responsibility in relation to funding decisions relating to police and other matters. So the point I'm making, I think, is that the resources that are available to deliver what we've delivered recently, I think we're probably at capacity, and we would be lobbying Welsh Government and the Home Office going forward in relation to whether additional resources should be made available. We've been able to draw down temporarily, I suppose, some additional resources looking at coastal management and some of the resource management, and we're looking to obviously utilise some of the emergency funding that was made available to the local authority to deliver some of that resource. I know Deb is currently looking at staff to monitor our coastal areas, aren't we, through the summer, Deb? I know that our enforcement team are also pressurised in terms of their ability to be here, there and everywhere at the moment. So again, we're looking at all of the resources that we have available to us as a local authority to respond to the issues that we have. But I thought I'd just pick up on those two issues. One is the action plan will need to be reviewed in the light of COVID, and secondly, the part the local authority plays in supporting community safety within its area. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Has anybody got any questions on that? Heather, did I see your hand up then? Heather, you're on mute. We can't hear you.
Heather, you need to unmute yourself. Sorry.
Am I done? Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now, yes.
I was just saying there's a lot of work in it. There's a lot of work done, and it's quite complex in it. So to take it all in, it needs a couple of hours. I couldn't just take it all in, but I can see there's a lot of work done, and there's a bit more to be done. It's all facing positive from what I can see, which is all good. Thank you very much.
Yes. Thank you for that, Heather. I'll agree with you there. As I said, with COVID, there are things that will not have been possible to do. So it's, as I said, it's amazing you guys have got done as much as you have got done. Okay, so if we have no more questions on that, I'll go on to the next item on the agenda, and I will say thank you very much to Debbie and Mike. Again, Debbie, please pass your thanks on to our thanks on to your team as well. We really appreciate the pressures they've been under, so they've done amazing work. Oh, Sally has something quickly she wants to say. Go ahead, Councillor Hanks.
I was just going to say I was happy to pass the 2 recommendations.
Oh yes,
okay.
Sorry, I skipped that bit. I
okay.
I was going to say that, Chair. Sorry.
Yeah, I did skip that bit. Thank you for bringing that to my attention, Councillor Hanks.
I'll second it.
I was just going to ask if we had a seconder. Thank you. Okay, so agenda item number 8. Thank you, Debbie. If you don't have to stick around now, you can leave if you want. Go and have a glass of wine.
Good night, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Deb.
Okay, so agenda item number 8 is the 4th quarter scrutiny recommended tracking. It's the annual forward work programme for 2021-2022. I hope you've all had a chance to read it. I'm going to just go through the executive summary, and then I'm going to pass you over to Mark, who will expand on the more salient aspects. So the report has advises members of progress in relation to the Scrutiny Committee's historical recommendations and the proposed annual forward work programme schedule for 2021 and 2022. 4th quarter recommendation tracking January to March 21, Appendix A. 3rd quarter recommendation tracking October to December 2020, Appendix B. 2019 to 2020 uncompleted recommendation tracking in Appendix C. 4th quarter forward work programme 2021 to 2022, Appendix D. Cabinet annual forward work programme 2021 to 22, Appendix E. And the proposed annual forward work programme schedule for 21 to 22 in Appendix F. As I said, there is a heck of a lot of information in this report. So I think I will pass you over to Mark, who can expand on the more salient aspects, and then we can open it up for questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, committee. Obviously, we have this report on a quarterly basis. Obviously, over the last year or so, there's been a bit of disruption with it due to COVID. Hopefully now we're back on track. Key aspect, obviously, this is an evolving work programme, and obviously with the decision tracking as well, as new recommendations come through, they get put on the system. In terms of some areas of note, because I won't go through the whole report now because it is quite detailed, and hopefully members have had a chance to look at least the salient points of it. So I'll just go through key areas. Firstly, with regard to the main body report and paragraph 2.9, you'll see there that in response to the 2019-20 Scrutiny Impact Member Survey published in February 2020, the Scrutiny Committee Chairman and Vice Chairman Group on the 3rd of March 2021 agreed that Scrutiny Committee Chairman and Cabinet members were best placed to present the recommendation tracking and forward work programme reports to committee meetings in order to highlight the fact that both documents were under the committee's ownership and management. So obviously tonight you have noticed the chair has gone into more of an introduction and detail, and then I just follow up in terms of other other areas. So it'll be going forward a report that will be initially handled by the chair, and then me as the democratic officer here will go into some of the other salient points. Just going on to some of the other key areas. For example, in Appendix B, which is the uncompleted recommendations for October-December 2020. A number of these now are in fact completed. Of one of particular note was around the referral back to Cabinet about funding concerning domestic abuse assessment referral community safety services. So this went back via obviously this committee and corporate performance, where corporate performance echoed sentiments that were raised originally in the Homes and Safe Committee about the ongoing importance for funding that service. That has gone back to Cabinet now, and a subsequent report will be brought out by Cabinet and then referred to Corporate Performance Scrutiny Committee about that area, and other recommendations that have come from other scrutiny committees around funding. So that obviously is still a key topic that Cabinet will be looking at. Moving on to, bear with me a second, Appendix C. Some of the uncompleted recommendations from 2019-20, which are shown as ongoing. I just wanted to highlight a few around the festival. Obviously, because of COVID, that is still unscheduled or cancelled at the moment. So is leaving this open until we obviously know in the future date when festival will be held, and then obviously we can disseminate that to members and complete that particular action or decision. And then obviously one that is been an ongoing one for a little while, but we've had further updates, is about the report identifying an appropriate housing solution for the traveller community. As members are aware, this went to Cabinet in March, and then subsequently we had the referral back at last month's meeting. That referral back from this committee has now gone back to Cabinet, which I believe was looking at that topic today. So that is still in progress. Any subsequent reports and updates we will put onto the decision tracker, and I'm sure in due course we will get a report coming back to committee, probably eventually at some point in the future. In terms of the other appendices, Appendix D, just a quick run through that. Something that is a bit different from our usual setup for this report. We now have the last quarter's work programme, and it just shows what reports we had over that period of time in January to March 2021, indicating any reports that might have slipped to subsequent months as well. Also, you'll note Appendix E is the Cabinet Annual Strategic Forward Work Programme. This is to give members an idea of how this feeds into our work programme and vice versa. Just to give you a flavour, there's certain key or statutory reports that go to Cabinet and then on to us, and also then go back to Cabinet. And then finally, we have Appendix F, which is the actual work programme for this committee for the municipal year, so that's from May 2021 until April 2022. We obviously have a number of recurring reports and also ones that are sort of don't have a specific date as well, which are at the end of the table. So these are ones that would be deployed in future. Just to bring members' attention to one item, for July, we have a report on the Youth Justice Board, or Youth Justice Plan, sorry, which incorporates the Youth Offending Service Action Plan, which committee wanted to sort of incorporate into that report going forward. Basically, I've spoken to Paula Burnett, the coordinator with that. Because the need to have more time in order to validate the data associated with the report, she has asked if possible if we could move that report from July to October, just in order to give time for that data to be properly validated and cleared. So if members are happy, I will move that report to October before this report is uploaded to the website, which is obviously one of the recommendations of this report, is for this to be updated to the website. So if members are happy, I'll move that report from July to October. That's it really for me. It's a bit of a whistle-stop tour, but obviously it's quite a big and a lengthy report. So if members do have any questions, I'm more than happy to take any questions and respond as appropriate. Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, committee.
Thank you very much, Mark. I can see Councillor Hanks has her hand up. If you'd like to go ahead, Sally.
Thank you, Chair. Just on page 20 and 21, an update from Tony Curlis that was due in May. Have we got another date for that one, for digital inclusion? An update on that? And also CCTV, have we got an update for a month in which we could have an update on that, please? And Marcros package treatment work, a report coming to scrutiny in 2020. So I know we're hoping to progress with it, but we're a year behind, I think, just pointing out that the date is wrong there. So thank you, Chair.
Right. I'll certainly be able to, in terms of digital inclusion report, basically Tony has got a few reports coming in the pipeline to committee. I haven't got a definite date on this one, but I will try and firm that up with Tony, and I will let committee know when that is available. I know we have got some other reports from Tony coming up shortly. I believe we should have one, I think, in June, the annual report on digital inclusion. So that I'm hoping that some of the aspects might well be included in that, but I will firm up a date on any sort of separate reports that need to come from Tony, and I'll report back to committee if that is okay. In terms of CCTV and Marcros package, obviously we've kept that open at the moment. The Marcros package, when I would just let Councillor Hanks know, I'll remove that date on there prior to it being uploaded onto the website if members are happy with that as well. But I'm just wanted to clarify if Mike could, and he's put his hand up. Just if he had any additional idea when we might be expecting those reports. So I'll hand over to Mike.
Yeah, but Chair, very quickly, in terms of CCTV, we're hoping to take a report to Cabinet before the summer recess. Deb mentioned actually in one of her answers, I think, to one of the councillors' earlier questions related to CCTV. The last 12 months again has shown us the use of CCTV, but the targeted use of CCTV. We had a debate and a discussion around the use of mobile cameras. Clearly, the council's current system is fixed in the main. It's ancient, and also the there are discussions ongoing with a number of strategic partners at a strategic board level, including senior police officers, local authorities and others, looking to try and develop a way forward for CCTV in light of those changes. So in summary, we'd be looking, I think, for Cabinet to have a look at a review of CCTV sometime before the summer recess. In terms of Marcross, the problem at Marcross is that it has been going on quite some time. Unfortunately, the representative from National Resources Wales that was providing advice and guidance has moved on, and we have a new NRW officer who would like to have another look at the advice and the guidance that we'd previously been provided with a fresh set of eyes. Our view is NRW would like to see the impact of the brook, which is nearby, in the summer months, and to take an informed view. So we're trying to press NRW more quickly to come to a conclusion and a decision around licensing the prospective works. I've given an instruction to go out to tender regardless, so that at least we have a value that we can actually then engage back with members and residents to indicate how much the plant would cost, assuming that approval is given. It will just help speed matters up. And of course, I'll come back to scrutiny as soon as we're in that position to do so.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No other hands up? Okay, I would like to say that I'm quite happy for the YOS report to come to us in October time. If that's going to give them enough time to give us the information that's required, then that is absolutely fine by me. So as we don't have any other questions, I'm going to go and move the recommendations as listed, and ask if everybody is happy to accept them.
Happy to accept, Chair.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay.
Very quickly, I'm just saying, obviously we move the recommendations, but I also put recommendation that, you know, subject to the amendments around the Youth Justice report being moved, and also the what Councillor Hanks referred to about the date on the Marcross report, subject to those being changed, that Appendix F be approved and uploaded, subject to those amendments being made on the forward work programme, if that's okay.
Of course. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Okay. I have no items which are urgent on part 1 or part 2. So I would just like to advise everybody that the date of the next meeting is Wednesday, the 9th of June at 6 p.m. And I'd like to say thank you all for attending tonight. Go and have some fun and relax now. Thank you all for attending. Very interesting meeting.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Millie.
Good night. Good night.
Nice all.